And it's my pleasure to welcome Cathy McMorris Rodgers back to WSU.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Congresswoman's going to speak for a few minutes, and then she'll take questions from the audience. I'm going to ask you, out of respect to her and to other members of the audience, to keep your questions short and to one each, and not repeat more than one question. So I'll turn the time over now to Cathy McMorris Rodgers.
Great, thank you very much. Great to be on campus. Go Cougs! Looking forward to the game tonight. It's been fun to watch them. Thank you everyone for taking some time to be here. I thought I would just share just a little bit about myself and my work in Congress, and then open it up for some questions. I think that's probably most valuable to all of you, and why you came. How many of you know where Kettle Falls is? Okay, a few of you. It's 80 miles north of Spokane, and that's where my family owned an orchard and fruit stand. And I grew up working alongside my brother and my parents. We raised cherries and peaches and apricots and sold everything at the fruit stand. I can assure you that when I was in high school, and well, even in college for that matter, but I went east. I attended Pensacola Christian College for my undergrad. I'd experienced humidity or anything like that. And then I came back and I have my MBA from the University of Washington. But before you boo, I'm all cool now, right? But I never imagined that I would one day be serving in Congress, serving as representative for this great district, the most beautiful district in America. And it's a great privilege of mine, and work hard every day to make a difference, to continue to work to improve people's lives and create more opportunities for us. And none of us are perfect, but we are in search of that more perfect union. I love the vision of the preamble of the United States, where it says it's we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, and we're all a part of that. And America has really done a lot that we can celebrate as far as lifting people out of poverty, raising the standard of living, leading in innovation and technology, and all of that has brought a lot of positive, and then there's always challenges along the way. I was first appointed as state rep when I was young, in my mid-20s. I served for 10 years as state representative and represented the Northeastern Washington District. So that was a while ago now. And then became minority leader for the Republicans in the State House. And then in 2003, July of 2003, I always remember when George Nethercutt made a decision to challenge Patty Murray for the United States Senate. And I got a phone call, and that was the beginning of me giving consideration to running for Congress. I was like, I don't think Congress is for me, but anyway, at that time I was 35 and single. I ultimately made the decision to get into the race. It was a very competitive primary and general in 2004, and ultimately won, and have been serving in Washington, D.C. as your representative since that time. And now I serve as the ranking Republican on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And it's a great committee. I'm really excited about this committee because I'm excited about the work that we do on the committee. And at a time when there's certainly, I think coming out of COVID and everything that we've been through the last 2.5 years, it's a challenging time. We've done a lot of work. Well, we have increased mental health. It wasn't good even before COVID. I sometimes want to remind people that I remember watching a CNN documentary that Dr. Gupta had done on the deaths of despair, and this was right before COVID hit, as it turned out. But it really struck me, and he was talking about increased substance abuse and suicides, and just what was going on in the United States, and during that same time there had been some suicides in high schools in Spokane, and it was really heartbreaking to go to these schools and talk to the kids as well as the administration about what was going on campus. And then right after that, COVID hit, and we've been through everything that COVID meant for us as far as lockdowns, and now we have mental health crisis. But I think I'm starting to think that we have a physical health crisis also, just the number of people that I'm talking to that are dealing with some kind of health issue right now. But it's also been a hit to our American spirit. And I just kind of want to do a rah-rah that, you know what, we will overcome, and we have challenges, and certainly at times, you know, we don't always agree, but we can agree to disagree. I think it's important to have the battle of ideas. I believe in freedom. I believe in free speech. I believe in the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect, and having that conversation, because we get better outcomes when we do. So I'm the ranking Republican on Energy and Commerce, and the reason I bring this up is it's a great committee. It's been around since 1795, so it was there at the beginning. It was created around the same time as the Ways and Means Committee. Certainly the Commerce Clause and everything that the Commerce Clause has meant was really the genesis of the Energy and Commerce Committee. It's a committee that through the years has been at the forefront of some of the most important issues facing the country. It's also a committee that attracts members on both sides of the aisle that really are wanting to dig in and do the hard work necessary to legislate, plow the hard ground necessary to legislate. So the Energy and Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over a lot of different agencies. So it's at the forefront of closing the digital divide, broadband, but it's also a lot of healthcare. We oversee Health and Human Services, CDC, NIH, and then you get into energy and climate and all of those issues. So this committee is very broad in its jurisdiction. And I'm proud of the work that we've done, even in the last 2 years, that maybe doesn't get the headlines in the news, but it is work that we've come together bipartisan, and even we passed in June. We worked for months on legislation around more support for mental health. We did a comprehensive mental health package. Got passed out of the committee, I think it was like 50-2, and then it passed the House, over 400 yes, so that was very positive and important certainly important that we are getting those resources at the local level and at the state level, as well as here on campus, funds for really providing more support. In July, we passed out of committee a privacy bill that I believe is very important. One of my priorities is holding big tech accountable, and this privacy bill I had worked on for 3 years, bipartisan. We'd actually had a draft ready to go. We actually had made a draft public right at the end of 2019, and then COVID hit. We've got other things were kind of dominated, but this privacy bill, I think, is long overdue, and I'm very proud of the work of our committee in coming together in a bipartisan way to pass this bill. And it changes the whole kind of approach to collecting data. So it's data privacy and security, so that the entity, the business that is collecting the data, would only be able to collect data that they actually need for their business's purpose. And then anything beyond that, so location data or search history or whatever that might be, right now it's just wide open, and we know that there's a lot of data being collected, and then oftentimes it's put into a third-party entity that is sold, your data sold and used for advertising purposes. It prohibits the collection of data for those under the age of 17 for advertising purposes. But I think that this is very important, and it took, when the committee's doing its work, we did I call it plowing the hard ground necessary to legislate, because it means going section by section through this bill and making sure that we're getting input from a lot of different people and doing the work necessary, so that when we pass the bill, it passed out of committee 53-3, which is a very big vote, and it doesn't happen. And the chair and the California delegation doesn't quite like our bill yet. They have some concerns about it. So we had a couple of those from California that didn't support it, and we're still working on getting the speaker to support the bill. But you know, that's why I love the Energy and Commerce Committee. It's a committee that's really, when I think about this committee, it's at the forefront of innovation, technology, leading the world. On the energy front, you know, this committee has really been the leader in advancing energy solutions, energy leadership in the United States of America. Energy is foundational to our economy, it's foundational to our lives, our way of life, our standard of living. It is foundational to our standing in the world, the geopolitical standing in the world. We've been reminded of that recently when President Putin decided to invade Ukraine and what that has meant as far as, well, we learned that we were importing 11% of our crude oil from Russia, so that was cut off. We've learned that Putin has used energy as a political weapon. He's used it to fund his military. He's used it to advance his power. So I believe that it's very important that America be energy independent. That energy independence is important to our strength as a nation and our leadership. I also believe that we need to continue to, and America has led the world in reducing carbon emissions also, which is, I think, important that we lead on that front. And we've done it through innovation and technology, that we have led in really unleashing next generation on every front. When you look at I often talk about an all of the above approach to energy, because in every area, whether it's carbon capture, carbon sequestration, advanced nuclear reactors that are the small nuclear reactors that are, is exciting technology, next generation technology for nuclear reactors that will actually use the respent fuel, would recycle that fuel. It's exciting that we would be leading on this technology to help meet our energy needs, our electricity needs here in the United States, but also then be able to export that to others around the world. I think that's really exciting. I'm a strong supporter of hydropower and have led on hydropower relicensing efforts that would unleash even more hydropower. Washington State gets 70% of our electricity from hydropower, so we benefit from hydropower in the Columbia Snake River system and all that it's meant to us. And only 3% of the dams produce electricity. So I would like to see us have unleash more of those dams and make them hydroelectric dams so we could produce more electricity, clean, reliable, affordable electricity. We have the lowest electricity rates in the country because of hydropower. But and then, you know, we're leading on wind and solar. It's truly an all the above approach to energy that I believe is going to be foundational to our economy, to continuing to lead, and also to our way of life, our standard of living, and then also our standing in the world. So those are some of the issues that we're addressing in the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I think maybe I'll wrap it up there and see what's up. Well, you know, one thing I was going to mention, because I've been in Congress now, this is my 9th term, the years go by. You know, I didn't start out having values in my office, but probably 7 or 8 years ago, and this is more on a leadership front, I just feel like this is one of the best practices that I've identified, was when my team and I put together a set of values that we're going to guide our work every day in the office. And so our values in my office are based upon it's having fun while we serve. And serve is seek excellence. So every day, coming in, doing your best. Everybody matters. So every time we pick up the phone, every person that we talk to, every meeting, really conveying that We believe that. And we believe everyone should be heard and listened to. So everybody matters. Responsibly own it. Things happen. Sometimes we don't get the response. Maybe sometimes an email falls through the cracks, or a phone call doesn't get answered as quickly as it should. Responsibly owning it, and just getting that out front. Vigilant integrity and embrace change. So those are the values in our office. And as we have, and so we staff to those values. We do reviews. We do at our staff meetings. We do shout outs to each other to encourage those values in our office. And I have been so encouraged as we have rallied around those values and really kept them at the forefront, that it has, I think it made it a much more happier place to work, that we really can have fun while we serve. And I'm looking at Patrick because Patrick Bell here is my Deputy Chief of Staff, District Director, and he's nodding. Maybe I'll let him confirm that. And then finally, we're always looking for interns and those that might want to see Congress up close and personal. We are pretty flexible, working around your schedule, but if you'd like to come to DC and intern in the office, it's a great experience, opportunity for you, no matter what you decide to do, no matter what your major is. You don't have to be the political science major. Congress is working on issues every day. There's hundreds of bills, thousands of bills that are introduced. It's the battle of ideas, and you get to see that up front and help out in the office, and it's just a great opportunity. So I encourage you to take that into consideration.
One of our former interns is Jared Powell.
Yes.
Chief of Staff. So
yeah, there you go. So Jared Powell is, yes, hello,
yeah.
Intern who now is my Chief of Staff, WSU grad, was student body president.
Foley
Great.
Institute intern. Yeah.
Foley Institute intern. There's the sales pitch. Yeah. So anyway, good. Thank you. I'd really like.
We have a little over half an hour for some Q&A.
Yeah.
So let me remind you to keep your questions short and to the point.
Yeah.
A paper published by the American Law and Economics Review found that abortion reduced violent crime by 47% and property crime by 33%. Your website shows that you are tough on crime and it is one of your major policy concerns. If you want to reduce crime, why do you want to force people to give birth?
I'm not. I'm pro-life. I absolutely want to prevent crime, and I've not heard those stats before, but I also believe that every life, that our goal should be to protect as many lives as possible. And no, I don't want any woman to feel like her only option is abortion. And so what you've seen me support in Congress is limiting abortion after 20 weeks, prohibiting the partial birth abortion, no taxpayer funding of abortion. But bottom line, I want us to be supporting women and children at every stage of life. And that's going to continue to be where I focus my attention. I'm very concerned about the bill that passed this year that is allowing for abortion up until birth for any reason. And that is a very concerning position for me.
So you're still pro forcing people to give birth?
I'm pro supporting. I don't want women to feel like their only option is abortion. And supporting women and children at every stage of life. That's what I'm going to focus on doing.
What policies do you specifically support that help support women and children and people who give birth at each stage of life?
Well, I've supported a lot of legislation. I've supported legislation to expand Medicaid, for example, to help with maternal health and extending the Medicaid benefits for a year after birth. I've been one of the champions of that legislation. I supported the child care block development, which is block grants to the states and to local communities for child care, providing more support. And there's a lot of issues that I've led on and continue to work to make sure that women and children have the support that they need.
Like maternal and paternal paid leave?
I have worked on incentives for employers to offer that leave and give them more flexibility to do that.
But not mandating it.
Not at the federal level.
So I don't know if you know anything like about this topic, but Tulsi Gabbard was like a Democratic representative for Hawaii, and then she recently left the Democrat Party because she said that they're kind of like getting us too close to nuclear war, and that could be like a really big threat, and like Putin it might be a more like intimate threat than people think. So do you have any like thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, I served with Tulsi for a few years. I don't know her that well, and I haven't talked to her specifically about this issue, but I know that with President Putin and what his attempt to take over of Ukraine, that the question of whether or not he would use nuclear weapons has been on people's minds, and I know that the Biden administration, President Biden, has been concerned about he's concerned about provoking Putin to use a nuclear weapon. So I'm sure there's something in there that she's aware of. Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world when the USSR broke apart, and they gave up their nuclear weapons in exchange for a commitment that was signed by Russia, UK, and the United States that we would protect them if they needed it, if there was ever an attempt to take over Ukraine again. And so I feel like we have an obligation. I believe it's important that we are helping Ukraine now. Ukraine has never asked us for people, boots on the ground. I think that they've asked us for military equipment, military support, and I have supported that. I supported the $40 billion. I think that I want to be helping Ukraine as much as where it makes sense. And I think on the energy front, one of the best things that we can do to deter President Putin and his continued quest for power and recreating the USSR is to provide more LNG, natural gas in particular, to Europe. Europe is headed into the winter. It's going to be a very difficult winter for Europeans because Nord Stream 2 has been cut off, and that was the pipeline that Putin was using to get the natural gas in there. So I would like to see us helping supply Europe with natural gas. And as far as provoking, I think I don't have insights as far as I haven't been privy to those conversations. I just know that the administration's they don't want to provoke Putin to a nuclear war. And Gabby may be concerned. I think just have to listen more to Gabby as far as what insight she might have as far as what she's heard and what she's concerned about. Okay.
Moving on from nuclear weapons, do you see a future for nuclear energy in the United States?
Yes, I do. And I believe that I was talking some about the advanced nuclear reactors, but I believe that nuclear we should be embracing nuclear energy and what it could provide in meeting our electricity needs. It's very difficult to license a nuclear plant in the United States. There's one that Southern Company, which is based in Georgia, has been working on for almost 20 years, billions of dollars, and they've told me, we won't do this again because it's taken a lot longer and it's cost a lot more than we ever anticipated. And that's of concern to me that we want them to be safe, but if you get to this place, if you regulate it to a point that people can't do it, that's only making us dependent then upon some of our adversaries and for meeting our energy needs. So I believe that we need to look at the licensing, this project that Southern Company's been working on. I think we need to look closer at why it's taken so long and why it's cost so much, and then continue to invest in advanced nuclear, the small nuclear reactors. There's TerraPower, there's X Energy right here in Washington State, two companies, very innovative researchers that are wanting to, that are working on this, and it's exciting if we can do the recycled fuel, so then we don't have this question of what we're going to do with the waste. The waste question has really been also a limiting factor in the United States, because we permitted Yucca Mountain, but then those members, those senators and representatives from Yucca or from Nevada have blocked us from actually opening up Yucca Mountain. So, and then the final thing to consider about nuclear and advanced nuclear is that it requires enriched uranium. And what we've been working on, these small nuclear reactors, are using enriched uranium that we've been getting from Russia, because we don't mine uranium or enrich uranium in the United States. So therefore we were dependent upon Russia, so that's been cut off, and that's limiting then our ability to keep leading in advanced nuclear technology. So we need to address the mining and permitting in the United States too.
Yeah, sorry to keep pushing on this. First of all, I want to say thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. As far as going forwards on the west side of the United States, what do you think energy will look like in the next, say, 5-10 years? I know you had mentioned trying to convert some of our regular dams to hydroelectric, using more nuclear power. You have any idea what's going to be coming?
I think on the nuclear front, I think there's huge potential. We're limited right now because of the advanced or the enriched uranium, but we need to figure that out. So there's nuclear, I think, has huge potential. We could double hydropower in the United States of America. It is the largest renewable without building a new dam. Only 3% of the dams actually produce electricity, as I said. So I'd like to look at that licensing of hydro projects. It takes 10 years to license a hydro project. So that's, again, I think a lot when it comes to energy, there's a theme here, and it's around licensing, it's around permitting, and we are really limiting ourselves right now because it takes so long to get the licensing and the permitting done for any project. So hydro is 10. I mentioned this nuclear plant that they've been at it for 20 years. I met not too long ago with Amazon, and they have a 2025 renewable goal, and they were sharing with me that they'd like to get some more solar farms in the United States, but it takes 3 years to permit them. And they're just saying the permitting is a real limiting factor. So you ask, what are we going to do in the next 5 years? One of the things that has to be addressed is permitting. And I believe that we can do better. The great example is when the bridge in Minneapolis collapsed a few years ago, and it was an emergency kind of to get that permitted. And what normally would take 7 or 10 years to permit, they did it in a year. Or you look at the new vaccine that was developed around COVID. They did that in less than a year, and they did real-time review. I think there's efficiencies in the permitting process that wouldn't jeopardize the actual standards. We're not talking about lowering any of our environmental standards, labor standards. We're just talking about getting some efficiency. So that's the key to energy and unleashing energy is going to be permitting. That's probably the biggest barrier.
Thank you.
What will you do about the recent addition of 87,000 new IRS agents?
Well, I didn't vote for that.
Right.
I don't believe we need 87,000 more IRS agents. And
Will that be a issue in the new Congress in the future?
yes, it will continue to be a big debate, and the Republicans have unveiled or released a commitment to America, and it's there's 4 pillars. It's around an economy that is strong, so addressing inflation and spending and energy, and then it's a nation that is safe, so that's securing the border and addressing drugs and fentanyl, especially coming into the United States. It is a nation built, future built on freedom and oversight. So it's accountability, and that's the Republicans. And part of this is not funding. If the Republicans win the majority, our goal is to not fund the 87,000 agents.
So I come from a low-income household with a disabled father, and so I was wondering if you had any insights from the work you do based off of some of the challenges for lower-income families as it relates to limiting what we can produce energy-wise in the United States, and how that has an immediate impact on those of us that are hurting the worst when energy prices go up.
Yes, I think that's an important point that often gets overlooked is when gas prices are going up, when your utility bills are going up. I heard one report that Europe, at least some countries, are facing utility bills, heating your home, $3,000 per month heading into winter. I mean, think about it's just impossible probably for most of us, but for a low-income family, filling up your car with gas. Walmart told me just recently that a year ago, a family making $50,000 would spend 20% of their budget on food and gas, and today it's 50%. At least that's what they're seeing when people come to Walmart. And the number one item that they sell is milk. This was interesting. And instead of buying a gallon, people are now buying half a gallon, and they're not buying clothes. So at least this is in Spokane area, that the clothes are piling up because low income are focused on buying the food, the groceries that they need, and they're not buying the clothes. So it definitely disproportionately impacts the low income. And when we have low, when I mentioned Washington State has very low cost of electricity compared to other places in the country, that impacts your cost of living then. So then it's a lower cost of living, especially for the low income. And it also is it's a competitive advantage for businesses. There's a lot of, I'm just trying to think, I meet with many businesses who will say that those that are coming to Washington State, probably the number one reason that they come is because of hydropower and low-cost hydropower, and that means we're creating jobs, we're creating opportunities. Okay, I'm gonna go over here for a while. Yes.
Well, thanks again for coming out.
Yeah.
I know that fentanyl is a huge issue in our country right now that we're facing. I know it's like a big thing you've been campaigning on. Is there like a realistic timeline or plan that could either totally stop it, or at least stop the majority of them coming into our country?
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking what's going on with fentanyl. So what we've seen, and I believe it's a lot of the raw materials are coming from China. So I really believe that this has been it's been intentional on China's part, manufacturing in Mexico and then coming across the southern border. So it's one of the reasons why securing the border is so important. But the amount of fentanyl is now the number one killer of 18 to 45-year-olds. I just would urge all of you, be very careful. Any pill that you're taking right now, the number of stories of families that have lost family members, young people in particular, that they think they're buying Oxycontin, or think they're buying something that's okay, and then they end up, it's laced in fentanyl. It's just, I've heard these, certainly there's those that are addicted and are struggling with substance abuse addiction and those issues, but there's a lot of families right now that have lost loved ones when there was not an addiction. It was simply taking a pill that they didn't realize what they were taking, and it's the amount of fentanyl that's on the Lincoln's ear on the penny can kill you. I mean, it's very potent. So we need to, I believe that we need to stop, and we need the fentanyl analog. So right now, fentanyl is an illegal substance. It's classified as an illegal substance in the United States. But the fentanyl analogs are not. So what they're doing is they're changing the recipe in these pills just a little bit, and then they say, well, this is not the illegal substance, and they're able to get those across the border. So we've been pushing this legislation that would classify all fentanyl and fentanyl analogs as an illegal substance, so that we can take it, get it off the streets. So that's top of mind for me right now. And the reason that it hasn't passed is that there's concerns about the sentencing for those, for the drug dealers in this, and so that's what we're trying to work out with.
So when you were talking about different energy solutions you're looking
Yeah.
at, you mentioned, thank you for being here, by the way.
Yeah,
Everyone
thank
was
you.
saying that, it seems a good thing to say. You mentioned carbon capture and carbon
Yeah.
sequestration, which as I understand it means, taking carbon, CO2 out of the atmosphere, either to reuse it as fuel or to just get it out of the carbon cycle so it's not contributing to climate change.
Yeah.
Can you tell me specifically what kinds of sequestration technology you've looked at and whether any of them have been actually implemented yet?
Well, I can't say that I've looked at anything that's been implemented yet, but there's exciting research and development around being able to capture the carbon, and as you said, either use it for other purposes, repurpose it. Well, there is one. There's one now that I think about it. A company in Spokane that during COVID, these guys, were sitting around bored and came up with this idea. They're capturing, so if you heat a big building with natural gas, they're able to capture the carbon of that natural gas in the heating system, was it? In the heating system, they're able to capture that, and then they put it into a liquefied form, and then they're actually using it for other purposes. So
Like liquid methane or
They're putting it into construction, like a jersey barrier, like a block or like a building block is the way the permit was
Yeah.
for it.
So this is a Spokane company.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so
Carbon Quest.
Carbon Quest in Spokane, and they're doing most of their work in New York. And so they've gotten several contracts with buildings in New York, and they are, so that's a fun one that's local, but also that's one if you're interested in that. Yes.
Congresswoman, thanks for your remarks. Since it's election season, my question is, the Republican Party kind of gets a little bit of a present company excluded, a bad stereotype of being like the party of old people. So what are you and your colleagues doing to
Getting older all
appeal?
the time.
You don't look at the to appeal to a younger voting base that's growing in numbers every year. What are your colleagues doing to appeal to them?
Well, first of all, I know the stereotype is accurate, but if you look at the actual average age of those of us serving in the United States House of Representatives today, the Republicans are 5 years on average younger than the Democrats. Our leadership team is 30 years younger than the Democrats, and we have more members under 40. I think we have 87. We have growing numbers of women and minorities. Myra Flores is, I think she's 37. Maybe she's 36. Myra Flores is one of the most recent Republicans to win a special election, the first Mexican-born member of Congress. Tells a pretty inspiring story of coming to America with her family from Mexico, legally across the border, and she says, she's 6 years old, and her dad tells her, this is a country with hard work and faith in God, you can be anything that you want to be. And 30 years later, she was elected to the United States House of Representatives. So that's pretty inspiring. So sometimes I feel like the Republicans kind of get it. We don't tell our own story well enough, but there's really some exciting younger members. And as far as appealing to young people, I like to visit high schools and give them copies of the Constitution and just talk about this great experiment in self-governance, and why freedom and free markets and free speech and a free people make a difference, and that the United States of America, although we're not perfect, nobody's perfect, But the United States of America has done a lot of good, and it's each one of us every day. What are each one of us doing? That's what self-governance is all about. That's kind of the genius of this form of government, is that it's each one of us every day doing our part. And so in the United States of America, one of the things has been that you actually have the freedom to take your ideas to make a difference, to start a business. Maybe you have an idea for a new product, a new service. You're able to get out there and do it. You have, these guys had this idea for how they could capture carbon emissions.
CO2.
Yeah, you know what? And they're doing it now. I mean, that's very inspiring. And time again, you talk to, that doesn't happen in other countries around the world. But that is a free people being able to have the freedom to take their ideas and do good. And it's not always business related. It can be in your community. The Republicans, we believe in local control, local decision making. We believe that the best decisions are made at the local level. And that's empowering, Pullman and the people who live in this community to make the best decisions, and that you're always going to make better decisions than someone in Washington, D.C. They're not any smarter. So those are some of the, I think, principles of the Republican Party that I hope, I think that hopefully that inspires people and encourages people. Yeah, and we need to just keep talking. We need to keep talking to people.
So do you think the last election was stolen?
No, I do not believe the last election was stolen. I voted to certify the election. I believe that President Biden is the legitimate president of the United States.
So how do you work with so many constituents that are other representatives that believe that it was, and people that are running now on the fact that they believe that it was?
I work with a lot of different people that I don't agree with on every issue. I don't agree with my husband on every issue, right? All of us, we have to respect and work with a lot of people that we don't agree with, and so and I think when it comes to election integrity, I do believe that is foundational. If we as a people do not have confidence in our elections, that they are fair and that every vote counts and it counts equally, if we don't have that confidence, we will. What's that?
Do you think that we should have that confidence? Is it a valid thing I think we have confidence in our election system? Is that a valid thing for me to say, or are there things that should not be confident about?
There have been issues raised, questions by Republicans and Democrats. Like what? Democrats have raised voter suppression issues through the years. This is intentional. And Republicans believe that we should have voter identification to vote, that would be a way to create more confidence and make sure our voter rolls are actually cleaned up. I continue to hear reports of people that get ballots from the person that used to live at their house or their apartment, and so.
Do you think
but
that
we
makes
shouldn't.
up a big percentage of the problem?
I don't think that we should be afraid to actually discuss. It's in the best interest of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents that we actually all have confidence in our elections.
So how do you think we can improve people getting access to the polls and being able to vote? Because that does seem to be a big issue in a lot of states now that are Republican led, where they're removing voter boxes and making it more difficult for people that maybe can't take off of work or have specific times where they can go and vote. It seems to be making it harder for them to be able to get to the polls or get their vote counted. So how do you think we can get around that or support that for those people? Because we have it easy here in Washington State with the mail-in ballots. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and some of those, I'm just gonna go back and say we shouldn't be afraid to, probably have a longer conversation, hear you out. Some of those issues that were raised that you're suggesting came out of Georgia, they're having record turnout. They had record turnout, and it doesn't seem to be the issue that some suggested that it was, from my perspective. But again, I'll just go back to I don't think we should shut down the concerns that either party raises. Because we all need to, the shared goal is that we have trust and confidence in our elections so that we can have the peaceful transfer of power. Recognize that we're not always going to agree, but we have to have that confidence.
So how are you gonna bring that confidence to people? And so many people are saying that election is stolen. How are you gonna pass that?
Well, I believe that election law should be kept at the state level. I believe that there will be more accountability and transparency at the state level. I am opposed to federalizing elections. I'm concerned about where that takes us, and so that's something that I am advocating, is that it stays at the state level.
So we probably have time for one more question.
Okay. I guess you get last question.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, my question was about sanctions, and specifically it feels like these days the Congress passes a lot of sanctions when they quite want to go to war, but also don't want to do nothing. So I've heard for example, obviously we're sanctioning Russia and Iran, and that makes sense, but I have questions about their efficacy and whether those sanctions are actually working in changing state behavior, and I also have questions about I think it was called CATSA. And the United States. So basically, it's just the U.S. Sanctioning countries like India, Indonesia, and Turkey because they're buying weapons from Russia.
Okay.
So I mean, we need India and Indonesia specifically to counter China, right? So do you think that we're overusing sanctions, and how effective do you think those sanctions are?
Right. That's a very good question. Very good question. I think this is. I mean, I don't know that we can just lump all sanctions together. I do believe it's a valid question, to look at, how the sanctions against Iran, how effective were those sanctions? Even the sanctions that we've imposed right now against Russia, there was a huge debate in Congress around the financial sanctions, the energy sanctions, we went sector by sector. That's where I think you have to kind of look at it situation by situation and be willing to do I think we should always stay focused on results, not just doing something because maybe it sounds good or feels good in the moment, but actually go back and let's look at what have been the results of these sanctions and have they been effective. And I don't know about the CATS. You said it's India and
Just basically any country that trades with Russia, or I think it's country of America's adversaries through sanctions.
Right. Yes. Well, I would have to learn more about that one in particular, and some of this, it's just I'm not as up to speed on those. I think a lot of that is more in the Senate. But good question. Good question.
Okay, well, I'm afraid our time's up. The Congressman has some other commitments on campus that she needs to get. Are you going to stick around for the game?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not tonight.
Oh,
I was here for the California game? That was a good one. Yeah, we won.
Before I thank our guests, let me remind you, next week we have two events. We have Eric Groendijk from University of Memphis, he's a political psychologist doing really interesting work on how identity is replacing ideology in the minds of voters. And then next Thursday we have Natasha Hill, who is the opponent of the Congresswoman, and so you have an opportunity to ask her questions and hear from her next Thursday, same time, same place. Now let me thank all of you for coming out today, and join me in thanking the Congresswoman for taking time here.